All right, cool.
I have one for you. And this is Michael and I were talking about this right before we went on. All right, so I want to ask you. You guys make the preamps, right? The CX series. If I were to upgrade, let's say I have a AVR right now, everything's built in, right? I got the processor in there and then the amplifiers in there, all in one box. If I wanted to step up and go with separates, what am I going to notice a bigger difference with? If would I notice a bigger difference going with a preamplifier
or a power amp?
I guess I could say it like this. It's tough to say it in this way, but does the separate power amplifier make a bigger difference, or the fact that it's a separate preamplifier? Which one contributes more to the enhanced sound?
I always say both. Buy them both.
And I'll tell you why that. I tell you why there's a question like that, right? Because some of the AVRs now do have pre-outs, right? Now it's like, should I just get a power amp or should I go separate? What should I do?
That's a legitimate question, and that's a good question. If you're okay with video switching, see, that's one thing you got. That's the third thing. You got the audio processing and all that. You got the power amp, but now you got the video. Is it HDMI 2.0, 2.1, whatever it is? If you're good with the video switching, keep your processor or use it as a pre-out and start going separate power amps. And I like going multiple power amps. Don't get a 5-channel, a 7-channel, 11-channel. For our trade shows, we use 2 11-channel amps to run our little theater. It's a 20 by 18-foot room, and God, know how much power that is. It's a couple 3,000 watts of power or something like that in there. But if you separate it out, the power, the high current that drives the amplifiers, that's what puts the strain on all the power supplies, on the transformers, the filter capacitors, all that stuff. It can't stay as stable when you're, trying to cram just tons of current out to your speakers. The processors, if we can get the load off of the receiver, having 7 or 9 amplifiers in one box is kind of crazy. It's tough to do engineering wise because there's a lot of stuff in that single box. So we do a good job because we know what the limitations are. We can beef up this part of the power supply or filter out this voltage supply for the DSP processor better. But if you can get everything outside and use your pre-outs, that'd be your first step. And then consider down the road, then you're going to want to upgrade the preamp processor because you're probably going to need the video. If you're good today, you're going to need some type of video processing upgrade in a year or two anyway.
So I guess to follow up, how much difference is there going to be typically if I use an AVR that does have pre-outs versus a dedicated preamp, PrePro that's all it does, no amplifiers inside that box? What kind of difference am I going to notice?
Yeah, it's still going to get better because then now your power supplies are specialized. What you're going to hear, there's again a ton of variables on this, but what you're going to hear is more openness. God, I can't even explain it. It's going to be more open. It's not going to be strained. It's not going to be trying to get the signal through. It's going to just let it pass right on through. When you have the power supplies that are dedicated for DSP processing, so you got 5-volt supplies. So you have 40 amps of 5-volt supply just to do the signal processing, the YPow and the EQ and the Atmos, whatever it happens to be. That all works in a certain voltage range. We get that all, a power supply is just for that, a monster power supply just for that. And that's what goes into these preamps. You get huge dedicated supplies. You'll have a huge supply for the digital section. You'll have a huge supply for the analog section, which is a completely different design, and that'll be off to the side. When you're in an AV receiver, and then we actually separate supplies for the video section. We'll keep that out of the way too, because that does nothing good for sound at all. That's video is bad for sound. We give that a separate supply. But when you get it all in one box with a single transformer, a single power supply that has a bunch of taps on it, it makes it more difficult. Now, modern AV receivers are miracles. I mean, they sound awesome. They're spectacular. But you start going to the next level, that's when separates start
Making a difference.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the way that you explained it really kind of sold me on it, because Michael, you were saying that you noticed more of a difference going to a PrePro.
Correct.
And in your last video, or a few videos, I don't know how, you said that you noticed more of a difference on your PrePro, and you said, well, because they're using better parts. And I was like, what parts? I want to know which parts. But Phil just kind of explained there. And that's what you actually said too. Better separation, all the stuff that you just described, Michael.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting too is that, when we think of separates, what I tried to explain in that video is that you have a separate processor, and that does all your video processing, your audio processing, separated from your amplifier. But what I think that's really interesting that you mentioned is not only do you have that, but internally inside the processor is better separation. You're separating this power supply from this power supply, and this video section from this audio section, and this digital section from this analog section, and that lowers that, I guess, like the noise or the amount of noise that can be introduced.
Interaction, everything. Yeah.
Very cool.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Because I always wondered, because if you're not using the amplifiers in an AVR and you're just using it as a PrePro, I assume like, oh, okay, well, I guess it has enough power, but you're saying it's not still not the same.
Yeah, it's still not the same. Right. It's better to, that's your middle step, is using receiver as a preamp.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the third is go separates.
Because a lot of guys wonder, isn't a processor like a separate processor? Isn't that just a receiver where they strip the amplifier out of it and they sell it as a processor, at an expensive charge kind of thing?
Yeah, I wish it was that easy.
So that's good to know that you don't do that. That's the answer there.
Well, thank you for making me feel like I need to upgrade that portion.
I know. I mean, I hope Derek, who is on the fence about getting a PrePro, understands now the differences. We're in the chat. Kango's trying to push him onto the other side. So
cool.
I mean, the one thing
I use Chana's affiliate links. Or Michael's affiliate.
Somebody's affiliate links in the description. Buy that stuff. But so is that the main reason why the PrePro actually costs a lot more? Yeah. Like they're usually starting around $2,000 ish, right?
Yeah, because you're building everything. You're not sharing anything. You're not sharing a chassis. So you have to mechanically engineer a chassis because the boards are in different places. They can be spread out more. So some guy starts with a blank sheet of paper and starts laying out, okay, we think this circuit board is going to be about this big. So we need a place over here away from this power supply and that over there. So it's not just, oh, here's a nice AV receiver. Let's, rip the amps out and truck them away. Because then everything's tucked, back in the corner where it's not supposed to be. So it's a whole different, it's a whole different process. I know.
You got to check it out.
And that's why they're expensive too.
Honestly, I had to hear it for myself because that was my thought always. I was that skeptic that says, hey, it's just an AVR minus the amplifier, and it's probably not going to make that much difference. And I try to go into things with an open mind, but I've got my own biases and my own, thought process. And so I went into it thinking I'm probably not going to hear. It wasn't like I was going in going, hey, man, it's going to be the latest, great. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. I went into it kind of negative, like I probably won't hear much. And it wasn't like complete night and day difference, but I was like, I hear better channel separation. Like things are just more distinct and more individualistic in each one of the channels and the Atmos channels. Yep. And I was like, I like this now, got me excited there. So
that's the problem. When you hear good stuff, it makes you want it. So as long as you don't listen to it, you're okay. You can live with it.
As long as you don't listen to it, just look at it. Look at it.
Well, it's actually your explanation, right?
Yeah.
Your explanation a lot of times is enough because I need to know what's going on in there. Yeah. Even if I hear it, it's like, oh, maybe I'm just hearing something, but it makes sense. I like it when stuff makes sense.